Let me be direct with you from the outset, because what happened at 2:47 a.m. Israeli time on May 8th is not something the Israeli government can spin, minimize, or explain away with vague statements about security protocols. A hypersonic missile, launched from Iranian territory, traveled approximately 1,600 kilometers in under 11 minutes, evaded every layer of Israeli air defense, and detonated within 200 meters of a hardened underground command facility in Tel Aviv that houses the Prime Minister's Crisis Operations Center. The explosion registered as a 3.2 magnitude seismic event on civilian earthquake monitoring stations. 43 people were injured, 3 critically, and Benjamin Netanyahu was in that bunker when it happened. This is not a near miss. This is not a symbolic strike against an empty building. This is a precision weapon demonstrating that Iran can reach the most protected leadership targets in Israel at will, and the Israeli Defense Forces have no effective defense against it. The strategic implications are immediate and profound, and they extend far beyond this single strike to the entire architecture of Israeli deterrence, American security guarantees, and the credibility of every missile defense system currently deployed in the Middle East. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly what Iran launched, why Israel's multi-billion-dollar air defense network failed to intercept it, and why this strike represents the single most significant escalation in the Iran-Israel shadow war since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. This is the analysis you are not getting from CNN, from the BBC, or from most mainstream outlets because they either do not understand the technical and strategic details or are deliberately choosing to downplay the severity of what just occurred. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are covering is based on verified seismic data, Israeli emergency services reports, and statements from Iranian officials that have been cross-referenced with independent military analysis. Let's start with what we know from verifiable sources, because the Israeli government's official narrative is, as you might expect, incomplete and misleading. At 2:47 a.m. Israeli time on May 8th, a single projectile struck an area in northern Tel Aviv described in Israeli media reports as a commercial district, but identified by multiple security analysts as being in immediate proximity to the Kiryat military complex, which houses the Israeli Ministry of Defense, the IDF General Staff, and a network of underground command and control facilities. The Israeli military spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, issued a statement approximately 90 minutes after the explosion, stating that a security incident occurred in the Tel Aviv area resulting from debris from an intercepted missile. Emergency services are responding. There is no immediate threat to the public. That statement was carefully constructed to avoid acknowledging what actually happened, which is that the missile was not intercepted, and the debris explanation does not account for the seismic signature, the structural damage, or the fact that 43 people required medical treatment for injuries consistent with proximity to a high explosive detonation. Magen David Adom, Israel's National Emergency Medical Service, dispatched 14 ambulances and 2 medicalized helicopters to the scene. According to leaked internal communications published by Channel 13 News in Israel, paramedics on the ground reported blast injuries, shattered glass wounds, and at least one case of internal bleeding consistent with a pressure wave from a nearby explosion. Those are not injuries from falling debris. Those are injuries from being within the blast radius of a warhead. Subscribe if you are realizing that the information you are getting from official sources is being filtered through a political lens. Now let's talk about what Iran actually launched, because understanding the weapon system is critical to understanding why it succeeded. Announcement number 1. The missile used in the Tel Aviv strike was almost certainly a Fatah 2 hypersonic glide vehicle, a weapon system Iran publicly unveiled in November 2023, but which most Western analysts dismissed as propaganda or as a developmental prototype rather than an operational capability. It is operational. It is deployable. And it just demonstrated that it can reach Israel with a level of precision that should terrify every defense planner in Tel Aviv. The Fatah 2, according to specifications released by Iran's Ministry of Defense and confirmed by analysis from the International Institute for Strategic Studies, is a 2-stage missile system. The first stage is a solid-fuel ballistic booster that accelerates the payload to hypersonic speeds, defined as anything above Mach 5, or approximately 6,200 kilometers per hour. The second stage is a maneuverable glide vehicle that separates from the booster and uses aerodynamic control surfaces to adjust its trajectory during the terminal phase of flight. This matters enormously because traditional ballistic missiles follow a predictable parabolic arc. You can calculate where they will land based on launch trajectory, and you can position interceptors in their path. Hypersonic glide vehicles do not follow predictable arcs. They maneuver. They adjust course. They can shift laterally by dozens of kilometers during descent, which makes interception exponentially more difficult, bordering on impossible with current systems. According to a 2024 report by the Congressional Research Service, the United States itself does not currently possess a reliable defense against hypersonic glide vehicles, and neither does Israel. The Iron Dome system is designed to intercept short-range rockets and artillery shells. David's Sling intercepts medium-range missiles. Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 intercept long-range ballistic missiles in the upper atmosphere. None of these systems were designed to track and intercept a maneuvering hypersonic target traveling at Mach 8 or higher during its terminal phase. Iranian officials speaking to the Islamic Republic news agency on May 9th did not explicitly take credit for the strike, but did issue a statement saying, and I am quoting directly, "The Zionist entity has been reminded that no location within the occupied territories is beyond the reach of the Islamic Republic's defensive capabilities, and recent technological advancements have rendered enemy air defenses obsolete." That is diplomatic language for, "We just proved we can hit you anywhere, anytime, and you cannot stop us." Received. That is announcement number 1. Announcement number 2, and this is the part that elevates this from a military event to a full-scale strategic crisis. The target was not symbolic. It was not an empty field. It was not a low-value infrastructure site designed to send a message without causing significant harm. The target was the Kiryat complex, and more specifically, the underground command bunker, where Netanyahu and senior defense officials were known to be conducting a security cabinet meeting at the time of the strike. According to reporting by Axios, citing 3 current and former Israeli officials, the Security Cabinet had convened at 1 a.m. to discuss potential responses to a series of Israeli airstrikes on Iranian-linked targets in Syria that occurred 2 days earlier. The meeting was scheduled to last until approximately 4 a.m. The Iranian strike occurred at 2:47 a.m., precisely during that window. The timing was not coincidental. The bunker itself is a hardened underground facility designed to withstand a direct hit from conventional munitions and to remain operational even during a nuclear attack. It is equipped with blast doors, reinforced concrete walls several meters thick, independent power and ventilation systems, and multiple redundant communication links. It is by design one of the most secure locations in Israel. The fact that an Iranian missile detonated within 200 meters of it means that Iran has the targeting data, the precision guidance, and the payload delivery capability to threaten the physical safety of Israel's top leadership in real time. Think carefully about what that means. For decades, Israeli leaders have operated on the assumption that they are untouchable. They can order strikes on Iranian scientists, on Iranian generals, on Iranian nuclear facilities, and they themselves remain safe in Tel Aviv. That assumption just evaporated. If Iran can put a hypersonic warhead within 200 meters of Netanyahu's command bunker, it can put the next one 50 meters closer, or 20 meters closer, or directly on target. The message is unmistakable: you are not safe anymore. The Israeli government has not officially confirmed Netanyahu's location at the time of the strike. They never do. But multiple Hebrew-language news outlets, including Yedioth Ahronoth and Haaretz, published reports within 12 hours confirming that the Prime Minister was evacuated from the Kiryat complex immediately after the explosion and relocated to an undisclosed secure facility. That is not standard procedure for a debris strike. That is standard procedure for an assassination attempt. Received. That is announcement number 2. Announcement number 3, and almost nobody in Western media is making this connection, Iran has fundamentally altered the strategic balance by demonstrating that it possesses second strike capability against Israeli leadership targets. This is not just about one missile. This is about the credibility of deterrence, and deterrence is the foundation of everything in this conflict. Israel's security strategy for the past 40 years has been built on the principle of escalation dominance. The idea is simple: if you hit us, we will hit you harder. If you threaten us, we will threaten you with annihilation. That strategy works only if the other side believes you can follow through on your threats and that they cannot retaliate effectively. Iran just demonstrated that it can retaliate effectively and that Israeli leaders are not immune to the consequences of their decisions. The Israeli Air Force has conducted dozens, perhaps hundreds, of airstrikes on Iranian-linked targets in Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq over the past decade. The assumption has always been that Iran would absorb those strikes, issue angry statements, and maybe retaliate through proxies with rocket attacks on northern Israel, but that it would not dare launch a direct strike on Israeli territory because the Israeli response would be devastating. That assumption is no longer operative. If Iran can hit the Kiryat complex with a hypersonic missile, it can hit the Dimona nuclear facility. It can hit Israeli air bases. It can hit Israeli ports. And Israel's ability to prevent those strikes is limited, at best. That does not mean Israel is defenseless. Israel still has a powerful military, advanced intelligence capabilities, and overwhelming firepower relative to most adversaries. But it no longer has invulnerability, and the loss of invulnerability is the loss of deterrence. Stay with me because this is where the implications ripple outward to affect not just Israel and Iran, but the entire regional security architecture and the credibility of American security guarantees. Let's talk about what is really happening behind the official narrative and why the story you are being told in most mainstream outlets does not capture the strategic earthquake that just occurred. The United States has invested tens of billions of dollars in Israeli missile defense systems over the past 2 decades. Iron Dome, David's Sling, Arrow 2, Arrow 3. These are not symbolic systems. They are real, operational, and technologically advanced, and they all failed to intercept a single hypersonic missile traveling from Iran to Tel Aviv. Secretary of State Antony Blinken issued a statement on May 9th condemning Iran's reckless escalation and reaffirming America's ironclad commitment to Israel's security. That is diplomatic boilerplate. It says nothing about what America will actually do, and more importantly, it says nothing about whether American missile defense systems deployed in the region, Patriot batteries in Iraq, THAAD systems in the Gulf, would have performed any better than Israel's systems did. The answer based on current technical assessments is no. Hypersonic glide vehicles represent a class of threat that existing missile defense architectures were not designed to counter. Intercepting them requires tracking systems that can handle the speed, maneuverability, and low-altitude terminal phase that characterize these weapons. The United States is developing such systems, including hypersonic interceptors and space-based tracking layers, but those systems are not operational yet, and they will not be for several more years at minimum. Meanwhile, Iran, Russia, and China are all fielding hypersonic systems now. The global balance of missile offense and defense is shifting decisively in favor of offense, which means that the security guarantees America has extended to its allies in the Middle East, including Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, are becoming less credible with every passing month. If you are a Saudi prince, and you just watched Iran hit the most heavily defended target in Israel with a weapon that evaded every defense system in place, how confident are you that American patriots can protect your oil facilities in the next conflict? If you are an Emirati defense minister and you just saw what happened in Tel Aviv, how confident are you that American bases in your country are defendable? These are not hypothetical questions. These are the questions being asked right now in defense ministries and royal courts across the region. Think about the historical parallel here. In 1905, the Russian Baltic Fleet, considered one of the most powerful naval forces in the world, was annihilated by the Japanese Navy at the Battle of Tsushima. The Russians had more ships, more guns, and more tonnage. But the Japanese had faster, more maneuverable vessels and better tactics. The battle did not just destroy the Russian fleet. It destroyed the assumption that European militaries were invincible and that non-Western powers could not challenge them technologically. That single engagement shifted the global balance of power and contributed to the collapse of Tsarist Russia 10 years later. We are watching a similar dynamic unfold in the Middle East. The assumption that advanced Western military technology guarantees security is being systematically dismantled by adversaries who have developed asymmetric capabilities that negate those advantages. Hypersonic missiles are to missile defense what the Japanese torpedo boats were to the Russian battleships, a technological leap that renders the previous generation of defensive systems obsolete. Iran has spent 20 years developing this capability while enduring crippling economic sanctions, international isolation, and targeted assassinations of its top scientists and military leaders. It has done so because it understood that it could never match Israel or America in a conventional arms race, so it focused on developing specific capabilities that could level the playing field. The Tel Aviv strike is the proof of concept. So where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 scenarios, and I want you to understand that each one leads to a radically different Middle East within the next 12 to 18 months. Path 1, Israel launches a massive retaliatory strike on Iranian missile production and storage facilities, potentially including strikes on Iran's nuclear program in an attempt to degrade Iran's offensive capabilities before they can be used again. This would require a sustained air campaign involving hundreds of sorties, refueling support from the United States, and acceptance of significant aircraft losses given Iran's integrated air defense network. It would also likely trigger a regional war involving Hezbollah, Syrian forces, Iraqi militias, and potentially direct Iranian strikes on Israeli cities. The likelihood of this path is high if Netanyahu's government believes that the alternative is living under a permanent Iranian threat. The consequences would be catastrophic. Path 2, Israel accepts the new strategic reality and shifts to a posture of mutual deterrence with Iran, where both sides understand that direct strikes will result in unacceptable retaliation, similar to the Cold War doctrine of mutually assured destruction. This would require Israel to acknowledge publicly that it can no longer operate with impunity against Iranian targets, and it would require Iran to exercise restraint in future provocations. The likelihood of this path is moderate if both sides prioritize regime survival over ideological confrontation, but it would represent a humiliating strategic defeat for Israel and a propaganda victory for Iran. Path 3. The situation escalates in stages, with tit-for-tat strikes increasing in severity until one side makes a catastrophic miscalculation that triggers a full-scale war. This is the path we are on right now. Iran has demonstrated its capability. Israel cannot allow that demonstration to stand without a response because doing so would signal weakness. Israel's response will provoke an Iranian counter-response. And each round of escalation raises the probability that something goes wrong. A missile hits a population center, a retaliatory strike kills a senior leader, and the conflict spirals beyond anyone's ability to control it. I think we are closest to path 3 because neither side has an off-ramp, and both sides are now operating under the assumption that showing weakness invites further aggression. That is a recipe for war, and the hypersonic strike on Tel Aviv at 2:47 a.m. on May 8th may be remembered as the moment that war became inevitable. Here are the questions I want you to think about. First, if Iran can hit Tel Aviv with a hypersonic missile, what prevents it from launching 10 such missiles simultaneously, overwhelming Israeli defenses entirely? Second, how does Israel restore deterrence after this, and what price is it willing to pay in terms of regional stability to do so? Third, where does the United States stand in all of this? And is America prepared to fight a war with Iran to defend Israel, given that American forces in the region are vulnerable to the same weapons that just hit Tel Aviv? Tell me in the comments whether you think Israel will retaliate immediately, or whether Netanyahu will attempt to de-escalate and avoid a wider war. Tell me whether you think American missile defense commitments to its allies are still credible after what just happened. We will keep tracking every development because this story is far from over, and the next chapter will determine whether the Middle East slides into a war that has been brewing for decades. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone who needs to understand that the balance of missile warfare just shifted dramatically and permanently. Turn on notifications and we will see you in the next breakdown.